South Florida has hired 25 top hunters to capture and kill the snakes. A nearly 17-foot-long python was killed last week. Now, it is the longest captured so far in this program.
Florida made a decision that sounded so unbelievable. People laughed, rolled their eyes, and swore it would end in chaos. They let loose hundreds of rare, almost legendary creatures known for their ability to take down massive snakes. Most thought it was doomed from the start. But then something unexpected happened. What everyone mocked began to work, shockingly well. What began as a gamble slowly became a breakthrough that's now changing the way we think about conservation. At first, the plan seemed ridiculous. Florida announced it would start paying people to go out and track invasive Burmese pythons. Critics said it was a media stunt. Others just didn't believe paying average citizens to handle an ecological crisis was smart. But the problem was real. These massive snakes, not native to Florida, had spread across the Everglades and were wreaking havoc on local wildlife. Birds, mammals, reptiles, entire populations were vanishing. The ecosystem itself was tipping out of balance, and something had to be done. So Florida rolled the dice. In 2017, the South Florida Water Management District launched the Burmese Python Elimination Program. It began small. Just 25 carefully selected participants were brought in for a short 3-month pilot. These weren't random volunteers. They were chosen for their drive, outdoor experience, and willingness to tackle a tough job. They were paid just over minimum wage and offered bonuses based on the length of the snakes they captured. The bigger the snake, the higher the reward. It was an odd combination of science and strategy. And despite the doubts, it started to work. As time passed, the program expanded, more hunters joined, pay increased, bonuses grew, and with every snake removed, the impact became more obvious. Contractors were soon making up to $30 an hour, plus hundreds in bonuses for locating active nests. Each destroyed nest meant dozens of potential hatchlings never made it into the wild. The mission grew to include 50 contractors across 9 counties, with added monthly prizes for those who removed the most snakes. What began as an experiment turned into a full-scale operation with results. But not everyone was convinced. When Florida launched public python hunting contests, critics called them publicity stunts. News stories questioned whether part-time hunters could really do anything meaningful. After all, during the 2013 challenge, only 68 snakes were removed. In 2022, around 600 participants caught just over 200. Meanwhile, official contractors were capturing hundreds more in the same time frame. One retired biologist said the contest made people feel like progress was happening, even if the actual impact was minimal. These events grabbed headlines, brought communities together, and raised awareness. But their effectiveness remained debatable. Some experts suggested different ideas entirely, including relocating pythons back to parts of Southeast Asia where they were actually disappearing. Others worried that untrained hunters were disrupting ecosystems, killing the wrong animals, and making mistakes that created more problems. But then came a strategy that changed everything. Scientists started using what they called Judas pythons, male snakes implanted with tracking devices and released back into the wild to betray their own kind. These males, especially active during breeding season, would naturally seek out females, unknowingly leading researchers right to large breeding groups. One python named Luther became a legend, guiding scientists to countless others for over a decade. Each female caught meant up to 100 eggs prevented from ever being laid. Since 2013, over 20,000 potential python eggs have been stopped this way. And that's not all. Technology joined the fight. Florida deployed robotic rabbits that move, give off heat, and smell like prey. These high-tech decoys trick pythons into striking, while hidden cameras alert teams in real time. Infrared systems now help spot camouflage snakes at night, turning the tables on creatures that once roamed undetected. The results? Stunning. In the 2025 Python Challenge alone, a record-breaking 294 snakes were removed. Since the early 2000s, more than 22,000 have been eliminated, 14,000 by contractors in just the last few years. In some areas, wildlife that had disappeared is finally returning, And where massive female pythons once dominated, their absence is now making a real difference. This turnaround has sparked a shift in public opinion. Once mocked, Florida's python program is now considered one of the most successful wildlife strategies ever launched. Participation is up. In 2025, nearly 1,000 people signed up for the challenge. Some, like professional hunter Donna Khalil, removed dozens of snakes on their own. It showed just how powerful individual effort can be when it's part of a united cause. And the story doesn't stop there. The program has become a global example of how innovation and teamwork can solve even the most stubborn environmental problems. It's inspired other regions to rethink their approach to invasive species. What once looked like desperation has turned into a blueprint, combining elimination, education, and early detection in one powerful package. Initiatives like exotic pet amnesty now give people a responsible way to surrender pets they can't care for. Apps like I'veGotOne.org let anyone report sightings, becoming part of a statewide surveillance network. Even kids asking questions at school or families joining cleanup days are playing a role. Because when the public is involved, outcomes improve across the board. More trust. More solutions. More impact. Looking forward, the next phase is already in motion. AI-powered cameras are being trained to distinguish between native and invasive snakes. Annual meetings bring scientists, lawmakers, and citizens together to share ideas and refine the strategy. The mission continues stronger than ever, driven by the belief that everyone has a role to play in protecting Florida's ecosystems. In the end, this isn't just about snakes. It's about learning to solve big problems in creative ways. It's about trying bold ideas, building trust between experts and communities, and turning failure into progress. What began as a long shot has become one of the most compelling conservation stories of our time. And it proves one thing: when people come together, think differently, and take action, even the wildest challenges can be met head-on. What Florida's story reminds us is that sometimes the best solutions don't come from sticking to tradition. They come from breaking the mold, taking calculated risks, and staying open to experimentation. At a time when many governments struggle to respond quickly to environmental threats, Florida chose to act fast, even if it meant facing criticism. It didn't wait for decades of studies. It didn't spend years debating. It simply asked a daring question: what if we did something different? And that question, simple as it may sound, opened the door to a wave of innovation. The combination of citizen engagement, scientific insight, and technological advancement formed a strategy that, while unusual, produced results. It wasn't just about removing snakes. It became a blueprint for how to respond when nature is under siege and the old ways aren't enough. What's even more powerful is the way this program tapped into human nature. People wanted to help. They wanted to make a difference. They just needed a structure that allowed them to be part of the solution. By turning conservation into something people could physically participate in, Florida transformed concern into action. Volunteers didn't just watch documentaries or share posts on social media. They grabbed boots, flashlights, and GPS trackers and got to work. Suddenly, everyday people were becoming conservationists. Retirees, college students, hunters, hikers, people from all walks of life came together. Some joined for the challenge, others for the mission, and what they found wasn't just snakes, it was purpose. In a world that often feels overwhelmed by problems too big to solve, this gave people something they could grab onto, a real problem with a real solution right in their backyard. And make no mistake, the results were more than symbolic. Every snake captured meant fewer eggs. Every nest destroyed prevented the next generation of invasive predators. Over time, these small victories added up, and they're still adding up. With over 22,000 snakes removed to date, and millions of dollars invested in proactive removal strategies, the Everglades are beginning to breathe again. This is crucial because the Everglades isn't just a swamp, it's a living, breathing ecosystem that supports thousands of species found nowhere else on Earth. It filters drinking water for millions. It protects coastal areas from hurricanes. It's a natural wonder that, without intervention, was facing slow collapse. Florida's response turned that narrative around, and not just through snake removal, but through broader awareness. Once the spotlight turned to pythons, more people started paying attention to the health of the Everglades overall. That attention turned into education. That education became policy. Now, classrooms across the state teach kids about invasive species. Conservation science has found its way into state fairs, field trips, and scout projects. Children are growing up not only knowing the word invasive, but understanding what it means, how it happens, and what can be done about it. And that awareness is spreading beyond Florida. States facing their own ecological battles are studying the python response. From feral hogs in Texas to lionfish in the Caribbean, the idea that people can play a direct role in controlling invasive species is gaining ground. That kind of mindset shift takes time, but it's already underway. We're now in a world where invasive species are becoming one of the biggest threats to biodiversity. Global trade, travel, and climate change have opened new pathways for animals and plants to move beyond their natural borders. Some of those species, when introduced to new environments, become unstoppable. They outcompete natives, alter food chains, and change entire landscapes. And often, by the time governments respond, it's already too late. That's why the Florida model matters so much. It shows that early intervention works. It proves that public involvement works. And it reminds us that the line between professional and volunteer is thinner than we think when the mission is clear and the tools are in place. Take a moment and imagine what this could look like on a larger scale. Imagine schools across the country training kids to be junior biologists. Imagine hikers logging invasive sightings on apps that feed directly into real-time conservation maps. Imagine drones scanning forests for invasive plant clusters. Imagine community-led eradication days where neighborhoods rally together, not just to clean a park, but to protect an ecosystem. That's the future Florida's story points toward. A future where conservation isn't just something experts do behind lab doors, it's something we all do, together. And it's not just about stopping what's harmful. It's about making space for what's good to thrive again. As pythons are removed, native animals like raccoons, marsh rabbits, and wading birds are returning. Turtles are laying eggs where predators once waited. The web of life is beginning to repair itself. And that kind of recovery, quiet, gradual, resilient, is one of the most hopeful signs we could ask for. Of course, the work is far from finished. Pythons are still out there, still reproducing, still hiding deep in the wetlands. New tools are being developed constantly. Better sensors, smarter AI, more efficient tracking systems. The fight continues, but now it's backed by data, momentum, and public support. That's why programs like the Python Control Plan Workgroup are so critical. They ensure that the lessons being learned on the ground don't get lost. They share strategies, refine tactics, and bring new voices into the fold. It's a living system, just like the one it protects. Always adapting, always improving. And perhaps the most important takeaway from all of this is a simple one. Nature can recover, but only if we give it the chance. Only if we act early. Only if we work together. It's easy to feel powerless in the face of global ecological change. But stories like Florida's remind us that change is possible, even in places where it once seemed hopeless. So whether you're in Florida or far beyond, whether you're a scientist, a teacher, a parent, or a teenager curious about the world, your role matters. Your awareness matters. And your actions, no matter how small they seem, ripple outward. Because the truth is, conservation isn't about one big heroic act. It's about millions of smaller ones, carried out by people who care. What started with a few people hunting snakes has grown into a movement that's changing how we approach invasive species, and maybe even how we approach the challenges of the future. So, next time you hear a crazy idea that just might work, think of Florida. Think of the Everglades. And think about what can happen when communities stop waiting for someone else to fix the problem and start doing something about it themselves. Because this wasn't just about getting rid of a few reptiles, it was about protecting a piece of the planet. It was about proving that even wild ideas can lead to real change. And above all, it was about rediscovering that when we take action, together, we are more powerful than we think.